TikTok's clean girl. It's an aesthetic that has survived the test of time under numerous names and cultures, even pre-internet. In January of 2023, 17 magazine called it a new obsession. But dedicated TikTok users may remember the viral clean girl video posted even a year before that, in April of 2022. You know those girls who always look clean?
Their skin is always glowing, their lips are always glossed, and they never ever look like they're wearing too much makeup.
The clean girl is a minimalist. She wears light makeup on her nearly flawless skin, but tells you that flawlessness is not a prerequisite of her charm. She will continue to make videos about glass skin and eradicating pores though. The clean girl has slicked back hair, wears the iconic gold hoops, and specializes in athleisure, blazers, or nice jeans. What no one will explicitly point out is that none of this has anything to do with cleanliness. It's more likely that, when coming up with the name, clean girls really just meant simple or minimalist. But the word they chose was clean. And this unravels an interesting thread. To be clean is to be rid of dirt, stains, or general grime. Otherwise, it refers to the idea of being morally uncontaminated and pure. Watching endless clean girl videos, I noticed that very little focus is placed on hygiene, which is achieved through cleanliness, which is implied by the name. Instead, the focus is on cosmetics or visuals. The clean girl is about looking clean, not practicing cleanliness, which makes sense. The clean girl is an aesthetic, and by nature of that category, it must be pleasing to the eye. But it's impossible to maintain a curated image in real life, purged of inconsistencies and flaws. We're people, not Pinterest boards. And yet, the clean girl has a way around this as well. The aesthetic has become an aspiration rather than something set in reality. By that effect, those who participate in this trend must commit to a grand lie. The idea that their appearance is effortless and obtainable while contributing endless labor to it. For example, in a September 2023 video, a lovely user who I am not trying to single out noted that a staple of the clean girl aesthetic is dewy skin.
For me, I think glowy skin, like having a really good skin prep routine, a dewy kind of foundation that just keeps your skin looking like skin.
This can be achieved easily by using the right foundation and skincare products. The goal, this user states, is for the skin to look like skin, which implies a natural charm, effortless, easy. Never mind the fact that if you want skin to look like skin, you can just wear your skin. But I get what she's saying, and perhaps even what causes her to say it. My question is, what kind of skin does the clean girl seek to achieve? Most of the images, TikToks, and YouTube tutorials on becoming a clean girl feature what is known as glass skin. Glass means clear, poreless, and textureless, effortless, easy. Except to me, none of these images look like skin. At least, not the skin I have, nor the skin of the countless other people on the internet who call bullshit.
Glass skin is not 24/7. It'll look good when you just wake up, it'll look good when you go to sleep, but throughout the day, your skin is just doing its thing. Please let this be a reminder from a skincare influencer herself that you are a mammal. You have hair, you have pores, you have texture, you will have pimples, you will have acne, you will have bad days, you will have redness, you will have bruising.
Damn!
You will have hyperpigmentation. Skin is imperfect because it follows us on a journey. Skin renews, it recycles, but it also stretches, it shrinks. So why do you think that the largest organ on your body is supposed to be blemish-free perfection?
Even people in real life who have clear skin still have some sort of dimension. This looks like ceramic. It's something that can only be achieved through genetics or endless purchasing or both. Not only is the clean girl an aesthetic or an aspiration, but she's a vehicle of that age-old capitalist lie. You have a problem, and my product can fix it. The reign of these standards has felt so drawn out that we often forget what came before it. If the existence of a clean girl exists, that implies the existence of a dirty or even, dare I say, messy girl. Smells, dirt, fart jokes, and grime. Before the clean girl, there was the unhygienic, so-called relatable influencer. More specifically, there was Emma Chamberlain and Shane Dawson. Now, just saying Shane Dawson's name gives me the ick, for reasons that have nothing to do with his hygiene and everything to do with the fact that white people called me Shanae for years because of that man.
Oh, hell no. Oh shit.
But that ick is a part of the brand image. In the mid to late 2010s, influencers rebelled against the otherwise perfect nature of their industry. Beauty content was especially loved at this time, with such icons as Jackie Aina and Zoella. When these creators graduated from their humble beginnings, they began to amp up their quality. That's kind of the point. You can imagine behind their camera, giant light boxes, high-powered microphones, and DSLRs. Jackie has also mentioned maintaining a beauty routine, upwards of thousands of dollars, just to keep up with the visual demands of her job.
I'm in the beauty industry. You guys are constantly looking at me in 4K, so I kind of have to raise the bar. It's a lot. It by no means that you have to do the same. Please. I just want to reiterate that.
But in the mid to late 2010s, influencers started prioritizing other aspects of the job over beauty, etiquette, and even camera quality. Emma Chamberlain started her channel in 2017. Prior to that, she was a high school student who shared funny videos that she edited with her friends. She ended up dropping out of school her sophomore year, and she pivoted to sharing videos with the public at large. In just 2 years, she amassed over 2 million subscribers, quickly becoming one of the most well-known internet personas of our generation. Not only that, but as Taylor Lorenz argues, Emma became one of the most important YouTubers today. This goes back to Emma's so-called relatability. I use the term so-called not because I think people are wrong to find her relatable, but simply because relatability is subjective. What you find as a reflection of yourself is not what I find as a reflection of myself. It's pretty self-explanatory. Self. But Emma's relatability for most internet users relied on her humor. Johan Engel Bromwich declared, in the first sentence of his article no less, that Emma Chamberlain is the funniest person on YouTube. Full stop. This humor is designed to draw in an audience, as her goal is to keep people watching by being funny. This is both an effortless and strenuous feat. On one hand, Emma is showing her authentic self to the camera. She doesn't think too hard about what the video will be or what jokes she's going to tell next, at least not in early videos. Her style was to turn on the camera and let whatever comes out, come out. But afterwards, when it came to editing, this is where it gets strenuous. Emma spent hours, 20 to 30 specifically, in order to land this humor. And land it did, girl. Land it did. Taylor Lorenz argues that Emma Chamberlain and those who began mimicking her style once she blew up ushered in a new form of influencing, one that didn't depend on being posed and perfect. Emma didn't always wear makeup on camera. Sometimes she skipped bathing and told you about it like a friend would. Above all, Emma never seemed to care about looking quote-unquote unflattering by society standards on camera. And she didn't care about being offensive in the sense of smells or cleanliness. In fact, most of her jokes revolved around pooping, farting, burping, or peeing. She made a joke close to the start of her career about never showering. One time, she even wore a diaper on camera as a joke. While memes about her being unclean for this behavior began to circulate, something even bigger took hold. She became an icon. It was probably not so much that she was quotably gross that made her appealing, but that she intentionally, or perhaps even unintentionally, subverted a lot of etiquette rules in the process, allowing others to feel safe in doing the same. In 2019, YouTube declared Emma as the fastest growing personality on the platform. As of March 2024, she has amassed 12 million subscribers. Her videos get a minimum of 1 million views, with her most watched video amassing over 38 million views. Emma satiated something that YouTube audiences forgot they desired with the influx of high-quality content. They desired an authentic, relatable, and accessible person. And yet, even so, Emma's career trajectory has trajectoried like no one has ever trajectoried before. Trajectory, I can't say that word. Right before our eyes, Emma has become a high fashion icon. She regularly works with Louis Vuitton, attends red carpet events, interviews celebrities. She rakes in God knows how much money. And even though she doesn't post on YouTube regularly anymore, god damn, that's a lot of plastic, she's still rather well known and thirsted over by the masses. This is because, despite the power of relatability and rawness, audiences still want their influencers to partake in aspirational lifestyles. That makes them even more interesting. As Kiyot argues, the audience, initially drawn in by relatability, now finds themselves captivated by a lifestyle that they still believe has that attainability, but has in reality drifted far from it. This precarious balancing of relatability versus aspiration is exciting for the audience, because they have formed a parasocial relationship with the influencer based on that relatability factor. The audience member thinks that they too can obtain the unobtainable, based on the influencer's success. If they can do it, why can't I? Kiyot adds, the influencer serves as a projection of the consumer's idealized self. Unlike with traditional celebrities who we find totally unobtainable, influencers represent a so close but so far attitude, right? We can just reach them if we follow in their footsteps. And yet the internet has rapidly changed over the last 4 or 5 years. Influencers who began as relatable icons slowly pivoted their content to astronomical unattainability. Aesthetic trends have taken over our airwaves, changing how people dress, behave, and perform weekly. We want glass skin, doll skin, no skin, all within a few days. Elegance content went viral, detailing what women should and should not wear to be accepted and desired. Cosmetic procedures became the norm, trickling down from higher society to the average person. That so far, when it came to influencers and internet personalities, is getting even farther. And now we've circled back to the age of the clean girl. What do influencers do now that aspiration is everyone's goal? Well, I wouldn't really know because everyone I follow are fellow essayists, and despite our trend of being dramatic and insane, my mutuals still very much feel human and unhinged. But are other influencers, particularly in the beauty industry, struggling to find a foot in a world quickly becoming obsessed with perfection again? I would argue so. Today, influencers have to be careful not to be careless with their image. They have to maintain an air of relatability, like before, but it has to be done a certain way. The way we perform relatability now is different than it was even less than a decade ago. Whereas Emma Chamberlain showed relatability through a perceived lack of cleanliness, because we'll get to it, and no filter, influencers have to find a new route to perform authenticity that doesn't include looking too unkempt or weird. But someone didn't get the memo. Alix Earle is a lifestyle influencer who is very, very 7-figure famous on TikTok. She reminds me of quirky influencers of the past, not necessarily in personality, but more so in her hygienic humor. In December of 2023, Alix Earle posted a closet clean out video on TikTok. It features her going through her closet, obviously, and pulling out a dress. The video is captioned, "Finding my puke-covered birthday dress from last year." Now, Alix is having a ball in this video. She finds it very funny. And judging by the virality, you might assume others think it's funny too. It has over 15 million views at time of research and 800,000 likes. But girl, look at the comments. Girl, how do you fully hang this up and put it back in your closet? Alix Earle roaches. Y'all nasty. The end. Okay, this one we keep in the drafts. This y'all queen? This y'all queen? OMG, you couldn't have waterboarded this information out of me. And so on and so forth. When I saw this video, my first reaction was, oh, sure.
Okay.
But the comments truly interested me. I wondered if Alix Earle was an influencer of the past. She could be. I actually don't know her very well. But if she was around during Emma Chamberlain's time or Shane Dawson's time, would the response be this unified against her? Probably. Emma, Shane, and everyone who has ever been perceived as unclean on the internet, or even in real life, especially in real life, has faced backlash. Even so, there was also a healthy measurement of support for these influencers on the internet. People viewed them not as dirty or roach-infested, but as relatable friends. In May of 2017, for instance, Shane Dawson and his now fiance, Ryland, I think with a D, filmed a boyfriend tag. Within the first minute of the video, both Shane and Ryland with a D probably discusses how Shane likes to sit on the couch, pants off, and pick at his butt with his fingers, effectively leaving poop shavings everywhere. The couch is a biohazard, and yet there are very few, if any, comments about this on a video that has over 13 million views. I don't think people were checking him to his face the way y'all say y'all was on Reddit, but I digress. The comments under Alix Earle's biohazard TikTok, however, are unanimous. They say that the relatability shtick has gone too far. They call her foul and insane. Let me actually blow these out before I start a fire. I haven't seen a large group of people be this unified since House Democrats and Republicans decided to ban TikTok instead of addressing real, actual, tangible issues. Every time, I began to wonder, based on the responses to Alix Earle, why we no longer tolerate unhygienic quirkiness. I wondered if our obsession with perfection, the clean girl, and other aesthetics had anything to do with it. If the near ubiquity of cosmetic procedures changed something within us. I wondered how the pandemic played a role. And then I began to wonder, what does being clean even mean? Who is made to be clean and who is allowed to be dirty? How has cleanliness evolved through the ages? And what the fuck does Alix Earle's puke dress mean for our culture? Catherine Aschenberg wrote The Dirt on Clean, an Unsanitized History. And in it, she argues that bathrooms tell you all you need to know about a person or their society. This theory led to Aschenberg writing nearly 300 pages on hygiene history, spanning from ancient civilizations to our current day. It's all Western, unfortunately. But don't worry, I know you didn't come here to read. Here is the shanspear version. If you were a super duper Christian saint back in the fuck all hundreds, you were probably washing once in a blue moon. Aschenberg argues that during this time, super Christians considered being dirty a sign of holiness. After all, as Saint Jerome said, he who has bathed in Christ has no need for a second bath. Bathing in hot water was also considered a big no-no, especially for virgins, because the heat would incite lust and other bad, fun things. This inspired the saying, a clean body and a clean dress mean an unclean soul. If that's true, then the Romans were dirty. They loved them a good bath. So much so that on Tiberius Claudius Secundus's tombstone, the epitaph reads, baths, wine, and sex ruin our bodies, but they are the essence of life. Roman bathhouses were pulling out all the stops. They had pools, exercise yards, gardens, libraries, meeting rooms, and snack bars. You could pop in to go see a sex worker, go next door to get your hair cut, and then go get your annual checkup at the doctor. All in the same place. The people on TikTok who roasted that girl for bringing a drink into her everything shower would have hated the Romans. But you better hate quick, because the fall of the Roman Empire is right around the In the early Middle Ages, women were advised to keep their chamber of Venus clean and to make love in the dark in order to better hide dirt. Aschenberg argues that toward the beginning of this era, cleanliness was super important to the people. So good for them. I hope there's not some horrible, lengthy illness about to sweep through the continent and ruin their progress. Oh my god, it's the plague!
Not on my watch!
Oh my god, it's Milanote, the sponsor of today's video. Exactly, shanspear. Milanote is an organizational tool for creatives that allows you to collect images, videos, notes, and more all in one place. Why is this important, you ask? Well, planning projects is scary. You probably have a billion thoughts floating around in your head and nowhere safe to place them. But Milanote is perfect for visual thinkers like me, and it catches my brain dumps and chaotic imaginings with ease. It doesn't matter if you're a student, artist, a filmmaker, or just someone who likes creating mood boards. Milanote is Milanice. Ooh, that's not. Yeah, well, I use Milanote to help with set design and essay organization. I usually start with a landing page, which is split into 3 categories: a video pitch, pre-production, and post-production. For set design, I like to start with a relevant theme for my script. I then gathered dozens of images across the web. Before I started using Milanote, this is where it would get a little difficult. It was impossible to organize every picture and link without messing up my document or having a billion tabs open. But Milanote has over 100 built-in templates for creative projects, making my job a lot less stressful. I can just click on a mood board template and insert my content. For this video, I was stuck between like a trash theme and an old Victorian plague vibe. I also had high fashion Oscar the Grouch going on. I think for next time, I'll probably use Milanote's drawing feature to sketch out some ideas just so I can work on framing and composition. When I'm ready to start my essay and research, I can just click back on my landing page and create a subboard for all of my research, notes, and brain dumps, as well as any script drafts. My favorite part about Milanote is the variety it provides. I'm able to supplement my research with visual guides. Creation is a lot more fun when you have diversity on your screen. Before in Milanote, I was only able to stare at letters all day. And that does not get the juices flowing. Even if you aren't a solo creator like I am, Milanote works well for teams too. Inviting team members is easy and allows you to gain insight from them by having them leave comments and feedback. Now, do you see how simple this is? Great, because now it's your turn. Milanote is available for free with no time limit. Sign up using the link in the description and start your next creative project. Thank you to Milanote for sponsoring this video. Or should I say, thank you to me. And you're safe from the plague, by the way. Thanks. So, the Black Plague changed how people viewed cleanliness, and more specifically, baths. People at this time believed that the hot waters enjoyed during bath time would soften the body and weaken it, making it vulnerable to the plague. In 1568, the royal surgeon stated that steam baths and bathhouses should be forbidden because when one emerges, the flesh and the whole disposition of the body are softened and the pores open, and as a result, pestiferous vapor can rapidly enter the body and cause sudden death, as has frequently been observed. By who? So in order to combat the perilous ills of buboes, Europeans simply stopped bathing, which is obviously counterproductive to us who are living through a pandemic of our own and who hopefully generally understand the importance of water. By refusing to wash, Europeans opened themselves up to a host of characters, including the fleas that carried the very sickness they wanted to avoid. Syphilis and other diseases were also feared when it came to bathing. People thought that the water could even carry sperm, making women pregnant. As Aschenberg states, for roughly 500 years, water had furnished cleanliness. Now, on much of the continent, water was the enemy to be avoided at all costs. Hygiene in other places was booming, baby, particularly in places like Egypt and the Aztec civilization and what is today known as Mexico City. These places were known for their cleanliness, with Egyptians apparently bathing daily, using their own form of deodorant, and eating breath mints. The same goes for the Aztecs. According to Bridget Bird O'Connor, Aztecs were repulsed by the hygiene of conquistadors. This is because back over yonder in Europe, people were still afraid of bathing the body. By this effect, the 16th through 18th centuries saw dirt, filth, and debauchery. Europeans cared greatly about looking clean, and not so much about actually being clean. They wore white linen underneath their clothing, which they thought cleansed their bodies of impurities. This linen became so integral to the way cleanliness was performed that fashion at the time began to change. Looking back on portraits of this era, you'll most likely see white linen peeking out through everyone's clothing. These shirts also became an emblem of civility, which Europeans used to distinguish themselves from the African and native people they terrorized through colonization. So according to Kathleen Brown, many early diary entries from colonizers noted the nakedness of African and Native American people. On top of considering darker skin unclean, Europeans also believed that the lack of white linen shirts on indigenous people made them uncivil. These goddamn shirts were so important to Europeans that inventories of wardrobes and wills showed that people owned more shirts than any other article of clothing. Medical authorities swore on they mama that dirt and grime was the savior of the masses. To be dirty and to have your pores clogged protected you from getting sick. Baths were rarely suggested by doctors, even on the royal court. But hands? Oh baby, they were getting wet. Europe was pretty much the same through the 18th century, but quickly it began to change. Over time, class began to inform one's cleanliness. The upper classes were bathing like crazy. Some of them were able to get water piped straight into their homes, others read hygiene etiquette books to their little ones. But impoverished people were not able to afford this luxury. Cleaning water was hard to come by for grown adults. One needed gallons and gallons of water just to bathe. Also, most poor people did not have bathrooms, and bathhouses had already been shut down from earlier panics. Working class labor was also more physical and was more likely to be outside in the dirt and the heat. These conditions led to a sort of health crisis in impoverished areas. Upper classes began to turn their noses at what they considered purposefully dirty creatures. As a response to continuous outbreaks of typhoid, typhus, and cholera, bathhouses began to sprout up once more, but they were worlds away of being comfortable as those of the past. It was really in the 1900s that shit stopped hitting the fan, at least for a privileged select group. America was quickly advancing in the hygiene Olympics, leaving behind every other Western country. I mean, we had plumbing here. Yes, 5 out of 6 Americans were still washing with a bucket and a sponge, and the country was committing grave, horrendous, terrible crimes against humanities, against every single person who was not a white person lining their pockets, much like they're doing today, but look at these guys. They've got plumbing. I hate it here. America wanted to set itself apart from everyone else and thought that defining their own civility and status was the way to do it. Cleanliness became the answer to this problem. Dirt was seen as primitive and chaotic, Aschenberg states, exactly what Americans did not want to be. Cleanliness, on the other hand, promised morality, good order, and reform. Americans thought they were so special, in fact, that when Eastern Europeans began to migrate to America, Americans chose cleanliness as a benchmark of assimilation. In schools, teachers demonstrated how to properly use a washing bowl and soap. In New York, students were asked, "What must I do to be healthy?" And they would respond, "I must keep my skin clean, wear clean clothes, breathe pure air, and live in the sunlight." Isn't history interesting? 1 minute, an entire continent can reject bathing, call people of color in other parts of the world dirty while doing so, and then try to make hygiene their entire personality a couple of centuries later in order to use that against other people. Wonder what that's about. To be dirty at this point was considered to be willfully obtuse. The anxiety this created among the American masses paved the perfect foundation for exploitation. The early 1900s was a time where cleanliness morphed into a business model. with the sole goal of creating attractive people and lining executive pockets. These 20th century advertisements would show Black children becoming pure and white with the help of a little branded soap. People who struggled with making friends or keeping partners fixed their lives with products. Cleanliness became a crucial investment towards success and prosperity. Like the linen undergarments of before, America in the 20s became obsessed with signifying cleanliness and health instead of actually just performing it. Hygiene became a social cushion and an emblem of class. The onus was on everybody to gargle, deodorize, and clean oneself vigilantly because unsuspected transgressions would not be treated lightly. But I mean, what were the hygiene companies going to do once their capitalistic ploy worked? Everyone would already have the products. And besides, America was becoming more industrialized. There were less dirt roads, less kerosene, less horses. How could we get them to buy more cleaning products when they were entering a new era of clean living, so to speak? Well, hygiene brands pivoted to associate cleanliness with beauty. They founded something called the Cleanliness Institute in 1927, and it was a way to both address public concern about hygiene and company concern about profit. Using magazine advertisements, radio ads, and public service announcements, and a battery of classroom teaching aids. The Cleanliness Institute aimed at making Americans feel that there was no such thing as clean enough. This mindset persisted for decades, trickling all the way into the next century. By the 2000s, bathrooms were drastically different from those of the past. They were bigger and more lively. They were a place where hedonism, narcissism, over-the-top luxury, and hygienic scrupulosity met, according to Aschenberg. Now we have every item we could ever dream of in every possible color. Our bathrooms tripled in size between 1994 and 2004. Our homes usually come with at least one bathroom or at least 1.5 bathrooms. Our tubs are large and fill quickly, nixing our need for servantry. And some people even have waterproof TVs and high-tech bathroom scales. We have entered an age of neo-hygiene. As Aschenberg argues, evidence of dirt is rare. In fact, smelling someone's real body or allowing your own real body to be smelled has become an intrusion, a breach of a crucial boundary. You may have noticed that I've been using hygiene and cleanliness interchangeably throughout this video. And if you're word savvy, you might now be saying, those aren't the same thing, Shanspear. You're a fraud, Shanspear. Or, if you're racist in my hidden comments, you might just be calling me the N-word, hardy R by now. Hygiene refers to the practices that keep us healthy and free from infection. Cleanliness just refers to being clean, usually by way of washing. Hygiene is usually achieved through cleanliness, and not just of the body, but our surroundings and environment as well. Over time, the two words have become nearly synonymous, and people started throwing in new meanings too. People have begun to use the word hygiene to describe practices that have more to do with personal preferences or visual aesthetics than actual health concerns. And if you fail to comply with these practices, your cleanliness and hygiene is called into question. Think shaving or douching. Shaving has no real medical purpose, according to Dr. Holly Cummings. In fact, pubic hair is designed to protect us from infection, dust, and dirt. If you want to get technical, it's more hygienic to keep your pubic hair in place and just trim it and wash thoroughly and regularly. The same goes for douching. It's actually not recommended by medical professionals because it can cause infection. Or if you already have an infection, it can cause infection to travel to your uterus, fallopian tubes, and ovaries. That's not very healthy. And yet both pubic shaving and douching have been marketed as hygienic. If you tell someone you don't do either, especially the former, you are considered dirty as hell, girl, by society standards. Our quest for cleanliness and hygiene have been marred by consumerism. We care less about health practices in our hygiene routine, and instead care more about the idea of masking or fixing a problem that has been sold to us. In Nora Ephron's 1973 Esquire article, a feminine spray manufacturer stated, Our whole approach was, women have a vaginal odor problem, and here is a product that will solve the problem. Jerry Della Femina, another advertising executive, once stated, somewhere out there is a girl who might be hung up about herself, and one day she goes out and buys Feminique and shoots up with it. And she comes home, and that same night she feels more confident, and she jumps her husband. For the first time in this girl's life, she has an orgasm. As if that was her fault. If I can feel I was responsible for one more orgasm in the world, I feel I deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. You deserve prison and hell, Jerry. Whichever comes first. And judging by your Wikipedia age, you're flirting with the latter! Hooray! We've come to a point in our culture where we are highly produced people. We fear what's natural. We try to fix it, tame it, subjugate it. We're more likely to add chemical sanitized smells or unnatural sweet smells to our body than to allow it to have its own scent. We find the body and its fluids to be disgusting, and so need to change or repress them. Aschenberg argues to smell like a body, which alters on its own with time, physical exertion, anxiety, and climatic and hormonal variations, demonstrates that we're not completely in charge, something we increasingly expect of ourselves. As more of the world spins out of control, it seems that there is a greater drive to manage what we can, however pointless it may be. You see, it was a very purposeful choice to include Emma Chamberlain in this video amongst Shane Dawson, butt picker, and Alix Earle, biohazard dress haver. To my knowledge, Emma hasn't done anything very egregious, nothing that would lead to someone getting sick based on her hygiene. Correct me if I'm wrong, I know you will. She just talks about bodily functions that I assume all of us do, right? Like burping and farting. Oh, it's coming to me actually. There was a time on her podcast where in middle school, she talks about a time in middle school that she got poop on her sleeve, but didn't know she got poop on her sleeve because it was one of those sleeves. You know those sleeves that are like, there's like a thumb hole and you fit it through? She had one of those on and she went to the bathroom, didn't roll it up or nothing in middle school, and got poop on her sleeve, washed her hands, didn't realize, went back about her life with poop. So she smelled like poop and she's probably getting poop particles all over. Our lumping of Emma Chamberlain with these other people highlights the strangeness about our neo-hygiene. Our expectations of cleanliness have become so skewed by consumerism and propaganda that we often don't know where to draw the line. Emma Chamberlain made a joke about not showering, and yes, she wore a diaper as a joke and none of us found it funny, but we don't know her hygiene routine. We mainly make inferences based on her appearance and the fact that she farts on camera and has dark circles. And then we lump her into conversations about a person who leaves poop on his couch. That's the logic of neo-hygiene. Catherine Aschenberg published this book in 2007. But her ponderings of our obsession with consumerist cleanliness and her confusion at the way we approach discussions of hygiene reign true for years to come. So now we see that Emma's rise to stardom came not just out of the sanitized beauty community on YouTube, but also out of our own culture's demand for cult-like cleanliness. Obviously, I'm being very simple here. Emma Chamberlain didn't take down the beauty and hygiene industry, nor did she change the way we view hygiene. If anything, her and Shane Dawson were exceptions to the rule for numerous reasons. Men are usually given a lot more leeway to participate in behavior that is considered unhygienic. They're not pressured to shave, they're not pressured to bathe, and most of their behavior is summarized as boys will be boys. This is probably why Shane Dawson got away with picking his ass on the communal couch for so long, with no one saying anything about it. And yes, while Emma has faced a sort of backlash for her perceived hygiene habits, white people, especially skinny white people like Emma, have way more space to be perceived as dirty than a black person or a fat person. If we go back to Catherine Brown's source, Foul Bodies, we'll see that European colonizers often theorized about the cleanliness of black skin. One in particular, George Best, came to the conclusion that black people's deep skin tone is the result of infection, making us inherently dirty and cursed. This sentiment of viewing blackness as inherently dirty has persisted for centuries. It's with this in mind that I simply cannot ever imagine a black influencer or a fat influencer having the ability to talk about these things, talk about picking their butt and not showering, or whatever else Emma Chamberlain has talked about, or Shane Dawson has talked about, or especially having a puke-covered dress. I can't imagine a black or fat influencer not being ran off the platform after that, quite frankly, because we are given way less grace when it comes to hygiene. Speaking of personal experiences, now is a good time as any to dive into the toe portion of the video, which might sound scary if you're new here. I host a newsletter on Substack called Tragedy of Errors, or TOE for short. This newsletter allows my subscribers to learn about upcoming topics and write in with their own opinions for a chance to be featured. For this video, I asked about cleanliness and what defines it, as well as any personal stories about hygiene. You can find my Substack linked in the description, or go to substack.com/shanspear. Micah states, I have seen a conflation in our culture between hygiene and health. Healthy people are hygienic, and unhealthy people are considered dirty and gross. Even the dictionary associates hygiene with health. The responsibility of personal hygiene can place the blame of things like disease onto the person who experiences it for not being healthy enough, cautious enough, clean enough. If the person infected was better, they wouldn't have it. That's not a fair way of looking at the world, though. Our next viewer is East Asian and notes how Australia and New Zealand, two countries they're familiar with, changed during the pandemic. Both countries increased their distrust in Asians as being unclean and bringers of disease, even as most Asians had been wearing masks, and often still do, and carrying around sanitizing wipes and hand sanitizer. It was terrifying to see cleanliness as a tool of racism in real time. Anonymous states, I have had acne since I was 11 years old. It is a chronic condition that will never go away. I could never be a quote-unquote clean girl influencer because acne, a perceived flaw, is viewed as a product of someone being dirty. D states, I'm a plus-sized black woman, so cleanliness has always been tied to the way I will be perceived in the world. I've been told by boys in school that because I was fat, it meant that I was automatically stinky and nasty. This was in elementary school. Our next viewer sent in an audio clip, and it's as follows.
I feel like I noticed during and after 2020 lockdown that more people who had gotten famous through traditional pathways like performing arts were getting on social media to be like, oh yeah, we don't wash for a week. Oh yeah, we don't bathe the kids. Oh, we take dust baths. Things like that. Like silly rich people stuff as usual, but since COVID, the silly rich people stuff has really gotten into like, yeah, we don't practice hygiene habits that most other people are encouraged to do. I feel like there are two reasons behind that. One of them is they're piggybacking on what influencers were doing before COVID because they realized that their strategy, famous people realized their strategy for trying to be relatable on social media during the quarantine, it wasn't working. Those Imagine videos, everybody hated that shit. And so they pivoted to what they had seen more popular social media influencers who had just developed their following from being on social media doing.
Jay is an autistic person who quotably struggles with keeping up with personal hygiene practices due to sensory issues and executive dysfunction. They state, marginalized communities often face barriers to hygiene due to lack of resources and/or discrimination, like poor people, unhoused people, disabled people, people of color, mentally ill people, queer people, and other marginalized groups, especially when multiple apply. Promoting hygiene inclusively means considering the needs of everyone, regardless of their circumstances, instead of isolating and labeling them as bad, impure, moral failures, or some other BS. In that same vein, Darth states, I feel like the first forgotten in this conversation are those trapped in conditions that have them get dirtier as time passes, much against their will, like homeless people, people living in territories devastated by conflict, people struggling to meet their needs when it comes to hygiene because water is expensive and so is soap. Our last submission states, hygiene's complicated when you're severely physically disabled. I love being clean. It costs extra money and time and planning to ensure that I'm always as clean as I want to be. Sometimes that inconveniences people whose help I need for these basic activities. It can become a topic of debate in a demeaning, intrusive way, like, why would you prefer showers to sponge baths? How often do you need to wash your hair? Ultimately, there's two ways disabled people get silenced. I won't take you seriously because you're not clean, and also, but why would you need to clean? Why is that something you see as a right you're entitled to? Aren't you being frivolous? Aren't you being vain? So, in a perfect world, I would argue that Emma Chamberlain disrupted the frenzied nature of our neo-hygienic society. In a perfect world, just for a little while. But we're right back to where we started. The hygiene Olympics are in full swing non-stop all the fucking time. Videos about feminine hygiene rules interlaced with messages about morality and attractiveness are quite popular. I, alongside Aschenberg, would argue that our unrealistic obsession is a reaction to the anxieties made by our culture's propaganda. Other historians, like Valerie Curtis, argue that this disgust is a biological aspect of mammals. Disgust of dirt is a part of humans, they state. There is an overall biological pattern to our revulsions. However, it's important to distinguish what we consider as dirty in our society, since that varies throughout cultures, histories, and even individuals. My point is that we have drastically altered what it means to be unclean. We are disgusted by excrements like poop and throw up, and rightfully so. Our desire to be clean in certain regards does reflect a survival instinct, and some of it just stinks. But we've also begun to loop in preferences of cosmetics into the conversation of hygiene, manipulating what it means to be dirty or unhygienic. And then we throw money and brands at these so-called issues, sneering at anyone who dares not participate. Like this TikTok about Alix Earle's lack of hygiene. Yeah, checks out. What the fuck does perfume have to do with this? Does it make sense to you that wearing perfume is presented on the same level of dirtiness as peeing on oneself and not washing one's biohazard dress? Maybe it does make sense to you because you went to a frat party with a tonsil infection and mono. But you didn't know it, you didn't know you had mono at the time. Yeah, babe. But did you know you had tonsillitis? When your friend suggested that alcohol would kill the bacteria at a party of other people that you went to when you had tonsillitis, did you know you had tonsillitis and mono? I'm just joking, girly, but I wish you the best, truly. Just be serious from now on, okay? So let's go back to the clean girl and Alix Earle. And I'll tell you what I've learned. The clean girl reminds me a lot of 16th through 18th century European cleanliness. I'm sure the girls who partake in this aesthetic are bathing much more than your average 1500s peasant, but that's not what I'm really concerned about here. The clean girl aesthetic and the politics of 16th and 18th century hygiene are similar in the way that they prioritize signaling cleanliness rather than practicing cleanliness. The entire purpose of the clean girl aesthetic is to look clean, not actually be clean. Every clean girl tutorial on the internet focuses on what you can buy, like clothes, jewelry, makeup, or skincare, to signify cleanliness. In previous videos, we've talked about the link between consumerism and perceived personal effort. Because we're constantly told that we're able to buy our way into certain societies and lifestyles, people are looked down upon if they aren't able to. Like, people with acne are perceived to be dirty because we've structured talks around skincare around the ability to fix it through ways of hygiene. But hygiene really just means purchasing power sometimes. People who can't afford new clothing, who may have to wear pieces until they fall apart, and of which they'll then probably patch up, are considered unclean because they aren't participating in constant consumerism, which has become inextricable from our idea of hygiene again. The clean girl has also come at an interesting time in our lives. Infinite Scroll Podcast argues that the clean girl has moved TikTok and other social media platforms away from the raw, authentic vibe that had become the norm over the years. Around the mid to late 2010s, we really had something going on the internet. People cared slightly less about their image at least in a way that is drastically different from how we perceive ourselves now. I know Black teenage girls who are wearing lace fronts to school. Lace fronts. You know how hard it is to apply a lace front every morning at 6 a.m. so you can catch your bus? With a full face of makeup? We were not doing it like that when I was in high school. It's just so much more pressure now, I would argue, than it was even less than 10 years ago, because I'm not that old. Aschenberg argues that our bodies change based on a number of uncontrollable factors. And this scares us. It makes us feel overpowered, especially in a world that is falling to chaos. Think about 2020 and onward, about the lifestyle most of us have adapted. Probably much too late considering that disabled activists have been begging for our attention years prior, but our lives drastically changed and have remained changed by the pandemic. The clean girl conveniently sprouted up around early 2022, perhaps even before that, as a semi-response to that hygienic anxiety. And that has become our new goalpost. As we've discussed prior in our history segment, how in the 20s we kind of went full gear, fucking Fast and the Furious with how much we championed certain forms of hygiene, that being consumerist hygiene. Mind you, that 20s era came off the back of the 1918 Spanish flu epidemic. So I think it's very interesting to see how waves of illness and pandemics and epidemics kind of inform how we practice hygiene and how we sell hygiene back to the masses who are already filled with anxiety. So by the time Alix Earle posted that video of her puke-covered dress in late 2023, we were already wary of this style of content. But what does mass shaming do but further stigmatize? What if Alix Earle is struggling with something we don't know about? I mean, what if she isn't struggling, but an average person viewing this discourse is? The idea of uncleanliness being relatable seems jarring for a lot of people on the internet. They ask, well, why would you even find this relatable? You must be foul too. But I don't think people actually are interested in learning about other people or their habits or what makes them have these habits. People online have just used this discourse to stroke their own hygiene ego. Oh, I'm messy, but I would never do this. I once threw up on my carpet and scrubbed her 40 days and 40 nights because I simply cannot go too long with foul odors. Okay. Love that for you? Who the fuck asked? This video became a hygiene hoedown midway through, which I really enjoyed, but what I really wanted to touch on is the way our ideals have changed when it comes to influencers and each other. Our growing aversion to personalities like Alix Earle shows me that we want relatability, but we don't want it in a way that triggers our disgust anymore. And our disgust radar has become quite sensitive. Emma was considered quirky, but I think her transition into high society kind of saved her from becoming too notorious. Our final straw was probably Shane Dawson, who was already hanging around high-profile people, living in a mansion, etc., but who still wanted to be perceived as relatable through his hygienic humor. I think we're very tired of that type of person. And I don't think we can see a repeat of such influencers like Emma Chamberlain or Shane Dawson, hopefully to God, not Shane Dawson, when it comes to their quirky cleanliness. We now want aspirational relatability. Relatability that doesn't make us feel bad about ourselves or cause us to bring our own beauty and morals into question. If you relate to, say, Nara Smith, you're probably going to be seen as elegant, someone passionate about health and aesthetics, or at least someone who aspires to be. If you relate to Alix Earle, people will probably call you trashy and uncivil. My, how the Terrans have tabled. Reparations. Grah!